I'm so excited. Thank you, Brian, for being here with me and Phil. A dream of mine to actually be on a podcast with you. Top 10 loan officer, top 10 marketing influencer on social media. I mean, you're just huge, and it's truly a dream of mine. So thank you for sitting down with us.
It's funny, I never in a million years, I never thought people would be excited to meet me, so it's like embarrassing sometimes too, but so I appreciate it. I do a lot.
Well, it's funny when I'm doing your mastermind, and that's how I got this interview. I said, listen, I was going to do the mastermind either way, but I told him, I'm like, hey, if you don't get me a Decker interview, I'm not doing it. And he goes, listen, I don't know who you think you are, but Brian's going to say no. And I go, hey, listen, you miss 100% of the shots you don't take. Just ask him.
Yep.
And thank you so much for saying that.
Of course. He asked me, and I was like, you know what? That's a savage marketing move. Hell yeah, I'll do that. I was like, it's legit. I was like, that's what I would do. So I was like, of course. Yeah. Game respects game.
Yeah, exactly. Thank you. Yeah. So, I mean, you're up there, like, as far as you, Tony Robbins. Every time I open my Instagram, you guys are the people that pop up. And when I saw that you were on stage with Tony Robbins, so cool. Can you tell me about that? Like, how did you get there, and what was that like?
Yeah, it's funny because about 3 years ago, I was terrified to speak on stage at all time my whole life. Like, I remember in accounting class, we would have to do up and go and do public audits, and you would have to do it in front of a class of your peers and your professor before you would graduate. And I had to ask my professor, hey, can we do this like after hours for just with you and the professors, or I won't be able to get through it. There's no way. I was terrified of it. So I always had this big fear of public speaking. And doing a lot of like real estate presentations in small groups, you're talking about something like the back of our hands, right? So it's easy to do. And then what ended up happening, I told my wife and I said, hey, babe, I love teaching. That's why I do content. I love it. That's why I run companies. I love teaching. And I said, I think the next step for me teaching is starting to have to do public speaking. And my wife was like, kind of looked at me like, babe, do you not remember your fear? Right? And so I was like, no, I'm going to do this and I'm going to give it a shot because I'm pretty comfortable on camera. I was like, but it's very different when you do it, in front of a public audience. And I said, okay, cool. I'm going to go ahead. I'm going to hire a speaking coach. So obviously hired Colin Boyd, just reached out to him, spent, I don't know, maybe 15 grand on speaking lessons for 3 months because it's a science, right? It's a science. It's how you move your body on stage, how you tell a story, your pauses, the human brain can only ever understand in a presentation 3 key points, right? So you have an opening, key point, closing, and they call it tie a ribbon around it. You have to tie in your opening story with the ending story. And the ending story, they have to be able to put themselves in the place you were in your beginning of your story, right? And so I learned all this. And so about a week after that, I get a call from a buddy of mine, Neil Anders, and he's like, hey, Ed Milet saw some of your content, and him and this guy named Edwin, who's a big guy with ADT, they want you to speak on their platform for a huge mastermind in front of like 2,000 people. And I was like, Neil, I took public speaking lessons like a week ago, bro. like I told you, like if you ever need me to speak, I'll speak. But can we start it a little bit smaller instead of Ed, in my opinion, is like outside of Tony Robbins, the most talented public speaker I've ever witnessed in my life. So I was like, okay, so super nervous, did it, ended up doing a really good job at it. Spent a lot of time, writing out the speech and did all that. And so I was like, cool. So then I get a call about a month later from Matt Ishbia from UWM. And Matt's like, hey, Brian, your social media content's doing really, really well. Will you come on and run a panel for me at UWM Live? And I said, okay, cool, no problem. So I go on there and I was on the panel. It was just me and 2 other people. So it wasn't that big of a deal. I'm on a stage in front of 7, but you're on a panel. We've all done panels. Not a big deal. So I was like, okay, that's easier. And then about 2 months later, he asked me to come and fly out and speak to about 1,000 brokers doing the same presentation. So he asked me to do that a couple times. And then Alan, who is, the CRO of UWM, calls me, must be, I don't know, February of this year. Hey, Brian, we have changed UWM Live. We want basically 3 keynotes. We want Matt Ishbia, we want you, and we want Tony Robbins. And I was like, first off, thank you. Second off, like, can I think about it for a day?
You like to think about it?
And I was like, and he's like, Brian, you're going to do a great job. And I was like, I know. I was like, but Tony Robbins, because Tony Robbins was like, is my guy.
He's my guy.
My guy, because I never liked motivational speaking. And I kind of said people are either born with it or you can't really teach yourself to be ambitious, right? So I kind of pushed it away. And then I saw him speak and was just floored. I was like, there's no way. How can you listen to somebody speak for 8 hours in a day? Right?
Yeah.
And so I had this idol of him in my mind. And so I said, okay, I'm going to do it. And so I was funny because a bunch of my buddies were like, how the hell? Like, no offense, Brian, we got billionaire, kind of unknown guy outside of the mortgage industry, billionaire. Like, how the hell do you sandwich yourself in that? And I was like, dude, I don't know, amazing, man. And so I ended up spending a lot of time writing it all, went up, delivered my keynote, and I'll never forget it. Yeah. And I walked off stage, and I got my buddy Tarek also to kind of be a keynote there too. And so I walked off stage, and Tony Robbins is standing right there. Oh. And mind you, he's a 6'7" man, right? Oh. And one of my good friends, Michael Savage, ran his Wealth Mastery for 20 years. So Michael is on a board with me on one of my companies. And so him and Tony Robbins are super close friends. They worked together for like 20 years. So I see Michael standing backstage and was listening, and Michael like he kind of gives me like, good job. And Tony walks up, puts his hand on my shoulder and was like, hey man, you got a future in this, kid. Wow. And I was just like, like freaking out. And then we got to go meet him backstage and that kind of stuff. But Michael told me, I'd asked him, because you have like a hero and you want to check that your hero really has the hero criteria that you want them to be. And so I had asked Michael, it's maybe a year ago before I spoke with Tony, I'm like, what is Tony like, man? Yeah. Like I know what he's like on stage and I know what he does and with his philanthropy, but what is he really like? He goes, bro, I'll tell you this. I spent 20 years with that guy. The guy is the most solid human being on planet Earth. Wow. He reads every single pro forma report of any of the major companies that he owns with his Robbins Fund. The amount of money that guy gives away he never does it for anything publicity. We don't even know half the stuff he does. Wow. He's like, for 20 years, he's treated every one of his employees that I've seen with absolute perfection. He is faithful to his wife. He is a great father. He has so much money. He should not be doing this. He's losing his hearing. He's losing some of his eyesight from being on stages and doing it. And he still does it because he likes to change people's life. Yeah. And so that just 3,000x his, thing for me. So it was a trip, man. It was a trip.
Yeah. I went to his seminar and you can't even explain it. I mean, I was jumping around and my husband's like, I can't believe you really got that into it. I was showing him the videos, but it's transformational. And I honestly, when I watch your videos on Instagram, they motivate me so much, and they do change people's lives, and you are changing people's lives.
I appreciate that.
I can't believe I'm sitting here with you right now. I'm like, this is a dream come true. It really,
that's
truly
awesome.
Is.
And I think that's the beauty of content, right? Yeah. And I think there's two ways that people make content. They make content to provide them self-value. Mm-hmm. Look at me, boost my following. Mm-hmm. How can I monetize this? How can I do this? And I started originally doing content with that manner, because that's just natural. If we're going to waste our time in our minds producing content, we got to have an ROI on it. That's what our business brain tells us. Yep. But what I have learned from my mentors is there is the financial value we get from something, and then there is the spiritual value we get from something, right? And exactly to your point is, when I was learning how to do content, one of my mentors, this guy named Mar, he had told me, he goes, Brian, if you ever want your content to resonate with people, you need to never, ever produce content that you want people to hear. That No, you need to understand, what do they want to learn? And when they watch your video, what can they immediately do to have a quick action to change their surroundings, even if it's just a micro move in a positive manner. Yeah. Everything you do is that. And once you build up a following, then you can look at, how do I potentially monetize something where the money they're spending, the ROI is so big for them, the trade-off isn't, I got a 1 energy input in for 1 energy input out, right? No, it's, they input $1 with me and they got $12 of value. And he's like, until you can do that, don't ever try to monetize your content. And it was the best piece of advice I get, because I think we all know on social media, we know those people that every call to action is swipe up for my course. And it's like, bro, how many courses you got, man?
It's true. There's some every day. And it's like, okay, enough. And you don't do that. I love all your stuff, even about generational wealth and what to do to set up your kids like that. You don't really hear people talk about that. And it's like, I work my butt off to set my kids up so that they're going to be set for life. And like, I'm teaching them finances and all that stuff. So much of that is so valuable. And I wish more people did it. That's why I follow you and I watch every single one of your posts and I love it.
Yeah. And I think that's a lot of it with the generational wealth stuff is my dad is a very hardworking guy. We didn't grow up with money, but we were just middle class. And I thought about it and I was like, my dad's a super intelligent guy. He never taught me about credit. He never taught me about saving money. He never taught me any of these things. And it's because his dad didn't teach him. And his dad didn't teach him. But yet we walk out of school, and I came from a good 4-year college, and I walked out and I could literally tell you, what Socrates was thinking when he wrote X, Y, and Z, but I couldn't balance a checkbook, right? Yep. And so,
that's so true.
I realized that. And so when we all as parents, we want our kids to have a better life than we had. But we want that better life to be a trade-off of time, right? So how do you give somebody time of quality of life? You have to teach them how to invest early and often, right? And if we all know, if we start one of our kids out with 10 grand by the time they're 18 and we just let it sit there, we know, my Lisa kid when he's 60 is gonna have $1 million, right? And versus, man, he's got at 30, if he starts, he's got to put in $5,000 a month to try to hit these numbers. And most people are like, well, I don't want to give my kids a head start. You're just copying out because you're too selfish to cut your spending patterns to actually help your kids.
True.
Yeah. And I think that's the thing that I try to put in content is, as a father, what are the things I'm going through and what are those values that I'm learning myself to give to people? And I think that's the beauty of creating content. Most people always ask like, Brian, how do you know all this stuff? I don't know it all. I just study it. And then as I learn it, I teach it to people, it's not rocket science.
Yeah. So how do you do that? Are you books or do you have mentors, coaches? Like, how did you get here?
Yeah.
Like you're just a wealth of knowledge and I love it.
I think, I fortunately now, I was born with crazy ADD as a kid, right?
I have it too.
Crazy ADD, right?
Yeah.
So as I have learned, there's two types of people with ADD. One type of people with ADD, they use it as an excuse to always be distracted in life. The other type of people look at ADD and they say, okay, I got to keep myself busy all the time. And I've got to be very regimented with my schedule because ADD or ADHD can be a superpower, right? It can be an absolute superpower when it's honed. And so I think that from just reading a lot of books of people that I really respected with wealth, I kept seeing them. Oh yeah, I was diagnosed with ADD as a kid. I was diagnosed with being hyperactive as a kid. I was all of these different things, right? And so what I ended up realizing is okay, I just got to keep myself learning and busy all the time. And I'm sure it's just like you, if we're doing the same thing over and over again and we're not learning and we're complacent, we find ourselves easily distracted.
Oh, and bored.
Right, and bored, super bored. So what I had learned is I pick a topic and I obsess over that topic for a period of 3 months to a year, right? And if you do that now at 41, well, I've done that on a lot of topics now, right? I've done it on finance, I've done it on stocks, I've done it on Airbnb. And so most people are like, well, how do you know all these things? Well, I've just been super hyper focused. And so how I find what to learn about is, number one, I always go in and take recommendations of books that I have seen multiple people that I respect as a mentor read. So whether that is from, I have a business coach and he's a business coach, not necessarily for like wealth, it's strategy and keeping time management. It's very similar to like an EOS or a Traction or Rocket Fuel. It's called Next Level Growth is the system I use. And within that, he gives me books to read and things of that nature. And then those books will obviously typically reference another book in that book and I'll read it. And I do everything on audiobooks. And so I typically, my schedule with it is on the drive to work in the morning, I usually listen to, some type of like ministry of a pastor, something of that. And then when I'm working out at the gym, I don't listen to music. I usually listen to a podcast talking about the opens of the stock market. I do that when I'm working out and then when I'm on treadmill.
Start doing that.
Yeah, it's key, you know, and most of us like get motivated by music, but it's get motivated by money and bettering yourself. You know?
That's so true.
And I think that's really where it came down is just a mixture of podcasts, I can't sit down and read. I get bored. And my eyes are tired usually from looking at a computer. So it's usually audiobooks, lots of different podcasts, and a lot of YouTube, man.
Yeah, YouTube's great.
There's really good, and especially too in short form content. I also use a book platform called Blinkist, and it takes all the best books in the world and condenses it down to 20 minutes.
Wow.
So if you really forces you to really put the really valid points. And most people, when they read a book, they walk away with 5 or 6 things anyways. Why not just get right to those 5 or 6 things? I don't need the story and the background and all the analogies.
With the
just
ADD.
give me
It's like, give it to me.
right now. And so it's literally, that's where it's been. And I think a lot of times people, the best piece of advice I give to somebody is if you want to attack something, let's say somebody wants to attack investing, right? Stop watching TV, stop listening to radio in the car, and don't learn anything outside of that for a period of 3 months. Everything you do, just do that. Because the problem most people do is they're like a squirrel. Oh, investing. Oh, Airbnb. Oh, this. So they have this surface level understanding of everything rather than just being a one trick pony for 3 months. But then you memorize that stuff and you just keep adding on to it. And a little bit of it too. I was very blessed to be born with pretty close to a photographic memory, so I can recall information. So I'm not going to lie, that is that something nice to have. That definitely helps. And so I can do that. So that's kind of where that worked in.
Wow. That's pretty cool.
Trip. But the other thing I was going to say too, so one of the biggest things I think that we all struggle with is the time management aspect of life.
Yep. That was going to be one of my next questions. How do you do it? Because you have a beautiful family. How do you have the time to do everything? Because do you still have 4 businesses? I know you have multiple businesses. How do you manage your time?
First off, I haven't perfected it yet. And my wife would say, that, I'm great at work. I'm a great father, but I'm actually really proud of myself because I think we're on 12 weeks in a row of date nights every week. So
that's
which is good for me. And I think what I have done, because I have ADD, I have to live a very structured routine, very structured routine. So when I originally, probably if I look back 10 years ago, probably is when I really made that change to really not let my day run me, but run my day, right? And it really came down. So there's a guy named Rob Dyrdek. Rob Dyrdek, he was a professional skater, used to be on MTV. Now, so he has broken down the science of what's called the Kaizen theory. So what Kaizen theory is Ford changed the automotive world by streamlining how a car is made on a modern assembly line, right? Well, what Toyota did was say, why are we going from this to this to this to this to this? Doesn't make sense. Why aren't we doing 12 areas of prep? And then when it goes down the assembly line, it's just, here's my package for this, done, on. Here's my package for this, done. They pre-planned that assembly line, and Toyota went and was able to cut the time it takes to make a car down by 70%. Using something called Kaizen theory, okay? And what Kaizen theory is there's all these little inefficiencies in our day we don't realize. So for an example, what my morning used to be like is I would get up in the morning, I would then go and ruffle through my closet, grab my gym clothes, right? Put my gym clothes on, go in, make a coffee, make a pre-workout drink, scroll on social media, or look at my emails. Then I get in my car, I would drive to the gym, work out at the gym, I'd drive back home, come home, wife and kids would say hi, I'd get caught up in some conversation about something. Then I would go in, I would shower, get my clothes ready for the day, drive to the office, sit down at the office, and then start my day. So I would get up at 4:45, but I really wouldn't start my day till 7:45, right? Yeah. And so I started studying Rob Dyrdek, one of my buddies, Kyle Kelly, who's really, really good at this stuff. And he's like, Brian, we have to optimize your life. Think about this. We everything in business is all about efficiencies, right? Yeah. We want to remove friction in business. Why does nobody optimize their home? Why does nobody do that? Why does nobody have, for an example, he's like, so Brian, here's what you need to do. He goes, before you go to bed at night, when you're in the kitchen cleaning up for dinner, make your protein shake, make your coffee, put it in the fridge. Number 2 is right before you go to bed and when you're brushing your teeth, what you want to do is go in there and put your clothes for work and for your clothes for the gym, grab it and put it in the car, but have your closet arranged by outfits. So my closet is t-shirt, gym shorts, shoes with socks in my shoes in every single one of my closet. My work clothes, or the shirt that matches the pair of pants or shorts with my work shoes underneath them, and my socks in it, right? And so my wife and housekeeper just kind of helped me put that together in my closet. So now all I would do is go brush my teeth, no big deal. Go in, grab my work clothes, grab this, go throw it in my car. Yeah. So then once I learned that, I was like, I woke up 4:30, grabbed my stuff out the gym, got in the car. And then I decided, why am I driving home? Why don't I just find a gym that has a full locker room that I can shower and change that's really close to my work? Yeah. So I now, which I'd get up at 4:30 or 4:45, and I wouldn't start work till 7:45, just by those small changes, I was at my office in my desk sitting at 6 o'clock. I took impressive. An hour and 45 out of my day. Yeah. And so I just started looking at all the little things in my life. True. Why am I going ahead and ordering food? I have to minimize the decisions I need to make every day. So I just do meal prep. Meal prep gets delivered to my office, right? All those types of things. So I was able to really carve out about an extra 3 hours out of my day. Just all these little wins of 5 or 10 minutes. And once I was able to kind of get to that point, I actually had some extra time in my day, which then allowed me to start another business. That's right? Amazing. And then with your businesses, I segment my day. So like I obviously have a mortgage company, which I've trained people to replace me. So I just really do CEO stuff, managing the vision, managing the marketing, managing that kind of stuff, and put people to replace me. And then obviously have a crypto company with like Dan Habib and a bunch of those guys that we did. Then obviously have my energy efficiency company with Tark and them. And then I also have a coaching business as well. Just a few, right?
Do you sleep?
And that's the key, right? So, I got my sleep down. I only sleep about 5.5 hours a night, but then I'll get 9 hours on Friday or Saturday nights. I'll log it in, but I just block my day out. So I'm just very regimented. That's amazing. And we all get trapped. Like, this is the biggest one. I tell everybody this. So most people don't realize it, and time yourself. You spend as much time in your day sorting emails as you do answering emails. Email comes in, and you constantly get distracted. Email comes in, this and that. So what I decided was I can't look at my emails because it'll distract me.
It's so true.
Right? Yeah. So what I did is hired an executive assistant. She works my email for me. And what she does is every email that comes in, she puts it into 3 folders. 1, Brian task, something I have to do that day. Yep. Brian to do, which is basically something I need to do later on, whether that's confirm a meeting time or anything else, or what she calls a file later folder. Just an email I need to see. Yeah. Right? And so I don't do any sorting to my emails, anything else. And then I trained her. We really only need to respond to probably 30% of the emails we get sent. If you train somebody to actually answer those as you, right? Yeah. So if somebody asks me, hey, Brian, any chance we could do lunch next Tuesday at 12? Well, she has my calendar. Why do I need to waste the time doing that?
That's
great. So she would do it. So I trained somebody to do that, and it was huge. And I was able to get back 2 or 3 hours of my day there. And so it's just, and you guys want a story, watch Rob Dyrdek on Ed Milet's show and what he has been able to do with his time. He tracks it down to even his happiness level. Based on, he found the perfect mix that 38 hours a week of work is his perfect degree of happiness, 11 hours of family time and all this stuff, which most people are like, dude, that sounds like a life I wouldn't want to live. I don't know about you, but I'd sure as heck like to only work 37 or 30 hours a week and make $50 million a year. Yeah. If that's what it's going to take me to get there, I'll live that robotic life if that's what it needs to be. You know what I mean? And so
I agree.
Yeah, right? So I think that's the big thing, is learning how to optimize our family life and optimizing our work life to make it as efficient as possible so that we have these extra times, and then reducing the meetings down. Like most meetings, why did we decide that meetings need to either be 30 minutes or an hour? Why?
I agree.
Makes no sense at all. Yeah. Why don't we just if you know the people, not have an introduction, not have a closing, and just say, hey, it's a 15-minute meeting. Guess what happens? In 15 minutes, they get the exact stuff done they would get in a 30-minute meeting.
So true.
Because people know they don't have any buffer. Yeah. We better get into this and get out of this. Yeah. So I learned that from Matt Ishby at UWM. He doesn't take any meeting over 15 minutes, except for his own internal meetings. So I always joke around with him when I come up there. I always ask this. I was like, hey, can I get 2 15ers back to back with him? Because she knows when I go up there for it. But he taught me that, and it's right. It's amazing, because then people, they shoot their shot right away. They get it done right away. They fill the fluffer. And so it's just little things like that most people, if they actually looked at it, they would find the time for the other things to do.
So we watch all your videos. We love all the investing stuff. We love all the reels you do.
Yeah, we're in real estate.
Yeah. It's such good information for people, and even for us. Like, we learn stuff just from watching your videos. So say you had $100,000 today, and that's all you had to invest, and you want to invest in something. What would it be?
Yeah, first thing I would do is I would divide it up. I'd divide it up into 4 $25,000 investments. And the main reason that is because I cannot foresee every single industry and every single market on how they're going to perform, right? So most people make the mistake if they have 100 grand to invest and they all throw it into a business they want to start, or they throw it all into a real estate. And then what happens? If it goes sour, it takes a long time to save up $100,000 again, right? Yeah. And the thing about investing, you don't have a get quick rich scheme. Every time I've gotten hustled by 2 Ponzi schemes, and it was my greed that put me into them. Oh, okay, right? So I learned my lesson. So if I do it, I would divide that up into a square of 25,000 investments each. And what I would do is I would do one as a very conservative play. And my very conservative play right now with where treasuries are at, even though it's not sexy, I take 25% of it, put it into like a 6-month or a 1-year treasury, get myself 5% on that, right? So super stable on that. The second bucket, what I would go ahead and do is I would, as much as many people wouldn't like this, I would actually follow what BlackRock's doing. And so BlackRock, obviously $11 trillion of asset under management. The only 2 people, or the only 2 entities in the world, as far as countries go, that have more money than BlackRock is China and the United States, right? Yeah. So BlackRock has more money than any other country on the planet except for the United States and China, which what that tells me is they can move the markets, right? Oh, yeah. So what I like to pay attention to is not what they were investing in, but what are they investing in, right? Yeah. And so they actually are launching a Bitcoin ETF. Most people don't know this. Most people didn't have any clue of it. So BlackRock has a win rate of, they have tried to launch an ETF, which an ETF is basically a stock that mimics the asset's value underneath of it. So like people right now, they want to buy Bitcoin or they want to buy gold. Yeah. What they would have to do with gold, go buy physical gold or go buy Bitcoin from Coinbase, right? Well, what an ETF is the fund buys all of this stuff, creates a stock with it, and as that value goes up, the stock goes up, obviously, right? So it gives people ease of access into an asset, right? And so after much like hatred of it, they finally came out and said, hey, you know what? This thing ain't going away. We're going to go ahead and going to launch a Bitcoin spot ETF. And what a spot ETF means is rather than betting on paper Bitcoin, we're going to actually buy physical Bitcoin, right? And so their exact rate, and I forget if it's 567 or 597, but BlackRock, when they've applied with the SEC to get an ETF approved, they are 576 wins out of 577 tries. Okay. Wow. They don't lose. Yeah, they don't lose. That's amazing. Okay. So what this told me is BlackRock knows something I don't know. Yeah. Right? BlackRock has already had lots of conversations with the SEC. And mind you, there is no spot Bitcoin ETF in the market. Canada has them, Brazil has them, some in Europe, but the United States has shot down all of them for the last 10 years, okay, right? So they went ahead and submitted an application for it. Immediately following that application, you had Fidelity, WisdomTree, Invesco, Charles Schwab all file for spot Bitcoin ETFs, okay? So what this tells me is Bitcoin as an asset is now being wanted to be invested by the largest institutional players in the world, right? Which legitimizes it. Now, on top of that, in the world of Bitcoin, there's something called a halving. And without getting too technical, it would be basically if I was going to say we have a house, a street, and we own 20 homes on that street, right? And there's 20 houses that are available for sale on that street. Now, if I came in and I said, hey, you know what? These are 20 houses available for sale on the street. Now, you guys can buy a house right now. You're going to be like, well, there's 20 houses available. I'm not exactly going to rush in and buy this. But what if I told you and said, hey, every 4 years, there's going to be somebody that comes in and they are going to buy half of the available houses for sale every 4 years. I'm like, well, okay, well, maybe I'll wait till right before they buy, right? And then you know that. You say, okay, well, I know if there's 20 houses now, in 4 years, there's only going to be 10 houses for sale, right? Then after those 10 houses for sale, then they're going to buy 5 more, so only 5 houses for sale, okay? Then there's only be 2, then there's going to be 1, right? And they do it down that way. Well, what we all know happens in real estate, supply and demand, right?
Oh, yeah.
And let's say this is the most amazing street, right by the beach. You can't mimic this housing street. You would invest in that. You maybe wait right before that 4-year period. Well, most people don't know that's exactly what Bitcoin is. There's 21 million Bitcoin. And then every 4 years, the amount of supply of Bitcoin that is released every day is cut in half. And there will only ever be 21 million of them. Okay. So there's a halving that takes place. And every time a halving takes place, it's pre-programmed. So what happens is there's a halving once every 4 years, which means the amount of supply of Bitcoin that gets released is cut in half. Therefore, it drives the price up. When a Bitcoin halving it takes about 6 months for the price to kind of stagnate. Then the price goes up. And depending on which halving, there's been 3 of them before, from the time of the halving to the time it peaks within that 4-year period, it goes up anywhere between 5x and 60x in price. Pre-programmed. You can look back in history. So I found this out about 4 years ago. Yeah. And I sold a cannabis company that I was invested in. It took me 9 years to get my money out. And I ended up getting several million bucks from it. Well, this was a large amount of money to me at the time. And I was like, well, I don't know where to put this money. Yeah. I'm going to put some in real estate. This exact same question, just a couple extra zeros on it, right? Yeah. So I put some money in real estate. So what I'm saying to you is exactly what I did, right? Yeah. And so then I went out and I basically bought $1.5 million of Bitcoin. Well, that turned into $7 million. And that's how my social media blew up, is everybody watched me do it. Wow. From in 2000, if you go back on my content, you'll see the end of 2019, I told everybody, hey, I'm going to buy Ethereum and Bitcoin. You guys are going to see what happens. I'm either going to look really stupid or I'm going to get a lot of followers from this, and I'm going to let them on my journey. So it was like I think I started buying it in like November of 2019. And by May of 2021, my account had, with no extra invested, had gone from $1.5 million to just over $7.5 million. Right? Wow. So we all think about, and we look at our kids. Yeah. Do you think our kids are going to be more likely to buy a bond or buy Bitcoin?
Bitcoin.
So Bitcoin's
the wire, right?
Yeah.
So that's why I would take 25% and I'd allocate it for somebody entry to put it into Bitcoin, right? Yeah. So now I got a really safe play and I got a little bit more of an aggressive play, but it's still a very wise decision and a calculated decision. Then what I do is I take 25% of that money, and what I would look to do would try to buy a rental property using sub 2.
Okay.
So right now, the biggest reason most people don't want to buy rental real estate, the interest rates.
Yeah.
How do you cash flow, right? Well, what sub 2 is, and thanks to Tarek, who had introduced me to Pace Mobley, and I can't take credit for any of this, but sub 2 is very easy to understand. It's simply what you do is you find a homeowner, and that homeowner wants to sell his property, but the property that he wants to sell doesn't have a lot of equity in the property, but he's got a great interest rate because he bought the house in 2021 or he refinanced it, right? So I'd go out there and I'd look to find a $300,000 house that's listed for sale on the market, right? And I would go ahead and I'd pull the title report on it and I would say, okay, did this person refinance in 19, 20, 21? Okay, cool. They got a really low interest rate, right? Then what I would do is I'd find somebody, and my real estate agent would go out there and search, find somebody that didn't need that mortgage paid off. They just want to get out of that property, right? They're not planning, they're planning on renting, they're planning on doing something. So let's say that house is worth $350,000, right? And let's say, like most people that bought it recently, maybe they owe $300,000 on the loan, right? So I'd go in and have my real estate agent negotiate the price down from $350,000 to $325,000. And then what I would do is say, hey, I'm going to assume your mortgage. I'm going to pay all your mortgage payments. Here's $25,000 in cash. Give me 5 years of paying this on the mortgage, up to 5 years sub 2, meaning I make the mortgage payments on your mortgage. It gets serviced by the sub servicer. And what you can do, the title company does what they call is a wrapped note. They basically say, hey, this is his mortgage note. This note now is the responsibility of Brian Decker, who's buying this house, who matches on title. Here's a sub servicer that's going to do it. And even though many mortgage companies say you can't do that, they don't ever call a note due on a note that's being paid on time.
Wow.
Why would they ever do it?
Yeah.
Why would they ever do it? So now I can take $25,000 and I can control an asset, and now I can get a 3 or 4% interest rate, and I can rent out a property to be able to do that and make the cash flow of it, right? So I just sold 2 Airbnbs of mine, and I sold them sub 2, and I was able to get $100,000 over the market value on each one of them to a hedge fund that bought them for me. The house, they were probably worth $825 a pop. I paid $625 for them like 3 years ago, and I wanted to redeploy that money into a development I'm doing in Costa Rica. And so I said, why don't we go ahead and offer these sub 2? I teach the real estate agent how to do it. Yeah. And he was like, Brian, I don't know. I'm like, dude, they have a 2875 on both of these things. They're going to go. Yeah. And I was like, list them at 925 a pop. He's like, Brian, they're 825. They're never going to appraise. I go, they don't have to appraise. It's sub 2.
Yeah.
They don't have to. One day, the very first day on the market, full price offer, 925 for the full thing. Closed them, got them all wrapped and done. Right. So I was like, okay. So that gives you your real estate exposure, right? So now most people would be like, well, to buy a $300,000 rental house, I got to spend $100,000. No, you don't.
Yeah.
Look for sub 2. It's going to take a little bit more work, but it's going to end up working. And then the last component that I would honestly go ahead and do is I would go in. People, even though the stock market, I 100% feel is completely overinflated. But within a stock market portfolio, you can do something very balanced, right? So I take the other $25,000 and I would chop it up into call it three things. So roughly, whatever, $7,500 or give or take for each one of them, a little over $8,000 for each one of them. I buy $8,000 worth of gold in that with the gold ETF because I believe that inflation is going to rear its ugly head again. I definitely don't think inflation is going to drop to 2%. I don't think that. Otherwise we wouldn't be having interest rates where they are, right? And so gold always traditionally goes up in an inflationary environment, especially too with the amount of debt the government is in. I mean, it's insane. I mean, just the tax revenue that we're bringing in can't even pay the interest on our debt and our defense budget anymore. It's crazy, right? So I'd buy a third of that with gold. Then what I do is I buy a third of that, which is your major indices, S&P 500, NASDAQ, just your normal ones that you do. And then I take the remaining 25% of that and I would do a play on AI. So I would do a play on AI. I think NVIDIA is a little over thing, but you can buy NVIDIA, AMD, do your your Microsoft, do some of your plays that are your Google on those things. And that's kind of the way it would go. So even no matter really what happens, if the real estate market sucks, well, guess what? Who cares? I'm going to cash flow because I had 3% interest rate, right? On my thing. I know with Bitcoin, if Bitcoin maybe will lose 15% of its value, but I know with a certainty that when we have that halving, over that next 4 years, Bitcoin's going up in value. And if any of these so like most people don't realize that if BlackRock took 1% of their wealth, they could buy every single Bitcoin available for sale in the market. 1%. Wow. Okay. So that's a bet I would be willing to take. And, and that, what I would look at that is a balanced portfolio that I know at least could have the potential of 2 to 3x over a 10-year period of time. And that's where I look at every investment on a 10-year horizon. Like people are like, oh, Brian, you bought Bitcoin. Aren't you mad you didn't sell everything at 69,000? No, I took profits and I let it roll. Well, Brian, aren't you mad? No, I'm not because I'm not selling it right now. And guess what? When you're going to buy it is when it goes to a new all-time high, like every other idiot, right? Like, because nobody wants to do it then, right? And that's where it is. And so, that's kind of how I play it.
That's amazing.
So we spoke a bit on interest rates and, you came up in the mortgage game for years. I know we don't have a crystal ball, but what do you think these interest rates are going to do over the next 1, 2, 3 years?
Yeah, no, that's a great question. I mean, and I have a little bit of a difference of opinion than a lot of people. I think there's two things the way it plays out. One, I think we have a black swan potentially coming out. And I think the black swan could be one of two events. One event is going to be this stupid COVID mask mandate thing coming back. Okay. Look what happened. They announced it today. Mortgage bonds will improved in price by 70 basis points today. It means interest rates improved by 0.25% today, right? And the reason why that is guess what happens? When COVID starts rearing its ugly head, what does the Fed do? What does stimulus do? Drives back down interest rates, right? So I think that one of two events are going to happen. Number one, in a black swan event, we're either going to get a credit default on these major banks. We already saw with a little bit with Silicon Valley Bank that immediately brought interest rates down since everyone's forgot about it and it's gone back up. So I actually have like a 50-50 road. I can say to everybody, if we get COVID mask mandates and COVID starting to come out again, or we get a bank credit within 90 days of either one of those things happening at scale, interest rates will fall by 1 to 1.5%. Guaranteed. Which would be amazing for all of us, right?
Yes.
Minus the masks.
Minus the masks. Exactly, right? And now if one of those two things does not happen, then I believe mortgage rates are going to stay higher for longer. Yeah. I think we could get as high as 8%. I think we maybe go another 0.5% on it. Mm-hmm. And here's the main reason. Most people think oh, okay, mortgage interest rates. Okay, well, mortgage interest rate, every time the Fed hikes, mortgage rates go up. That's what the average person thinks. Yeah. We all know that's not true. Now, the problem is what actually drives interest rates is inflation, okay? It's 100%. Now, the Fed's in a very tricky position right now because the federal government is more in debt than anything. The only country that is more in debt compared to their GDP or the revenue the country generates is Japan. Okay, they're the only ones. Besides them, we're the worst. Now, what happens is, which is sad, right?
Yeah, it is.
And what happens is they cannot afford to drive interest rates down because inflation is not under control. Inflation is starting to come back up again. So if they drive down basically bond yields and they drive those down by going ahead and buying bonds on the market to bring those down, what happens is interest rates start to come down. When interest rates start to come down, people start to pay more for things, right? So how do you do that when inflation is starting to rear its ugly head again, right? The only way you're going to be able to do that, and most people think, oh, Brian, we're not into a recession. Well, people forget. They always say, well, Brian, the bond's inverted. The 2-year has a higher, you can make more money investing for 2 years than 5 years. This is a great thing. We didn't go into recession. 100% of times that inverts. People they don't listen to the full story. We don't go into a recession until after the bonds no longer invert, right? So let's say the 2-year pays you 5% and the 5-year pays you 4.5%. Like, oh, it's an inverted yield curve. Well, we don't actually go into a recession until that 2-year becomes 4% and that 5-year becomes 4.5%. Then we go into a recession. So they're calling the game in the 6th inning, right? And so that is why unless we have those 2 black swan events, I think mortgage rates stay in the 6.75 to 8% level for another 18 months. Not until do we start seeing meaningful move lower in inflation in a recessionary environment, because outside of that, what we need to have happen is consumer prices have to come down. The average American is more in credit card debt than they've ever been in.
Crazy.
All these horrible things. The problem is the average American has amnesia, right? Brian, I'll never go into credit card debt. 2008 ruined me. Here they are, 3 times the credit card debt, right? Because they can't check themselves. Like I knew the market was turning in February of 2022. So I went in, and I'd never like to be mean about it, but we let 40% of our staff go. I've been doing this for 19 years now. I know what's going to happen. I'm an idiot if I let repeat and ignore the signs that I've been told. So I cut 40% of my staff because I didn't need them. Why do I starve 60% of my staff? I either starve 100% of my staff or save 60% of my staff, right?
Makes sense.
So I dropped that down. I sold my Ferrari. I sold houses that were in there, and I put myself into a cash position because I knew, hey, my income could come down by 60%, right? And then 2, I'm starting other businesses that are going to need capital, right? So why don't I just tell myself, no, I don't need to fly on a private jet anymore? Why don't I just tell myself, no, we don't need to stay at the most expensive hotel room? Why do I need 7 cars? Tell myself, no, who cares? Big deal. You're being fiscally responsible. Stop caring what everybody else may think. Oh, Brian must not be making any money. He sold his Ferrari. No, I sold my Ferrari and put it into cash so that when you can't afford your stuff anymore, I can buy it from you for cheap.
And you're making more money.
It's just it's how you do it. And so I think the consumer hasn't learned, and the federal government sees that, being like, dude, how high do we got to take these rates for these people? Stop spending on their credit cards. You know, and it's just people want lower interest rates because they want to pay less, but they don't really want lower interest rates because it's going to make everything a hell of a lot worse. You know?
You're right.
And so, that's my 2 cents on it. I'll see if I'm right or not. So.
We'll see. Future will tell.
Yeah, exactly.
So something that me and Angela talked about, I sent the videos to my wife. We love it. We look over everything. Is generational wealth for, you, your kids, maybe their kids. What's some advice you would give people to kind of build towards that generational wealth?
Yeah, I think there's 2 things I think every potential family member could obviously do. One of them's easy and one of them takes a little bit more work, right? So one of the things that every parent can do is start actually teaching your children at a very early age the habits it takes to invest and make money. So I've done content about it, and I found an app called Greenlight, right?
Yeah,
it's my favorite app in the world, right? It's awesome, right?
Yes.
And it's amazing. And I remember sitting down, I had a conversation with my son. And so my daughter, I never going to have to worry about her because she is quick on her toes. She's got the gift of gab. She's not as studious as I was as a kid, but she's just going to be a hustler. She just is. My son, on the other hand, he's more quiet, but he's absolutely brilliant as a kid,
Yeah.
right? But he's a quiet kid. He doesn't really like have the outward hustle in him. Now, given they're 7 and 9, but you still know as your kids. You can still tell, you know your kid, right? So I sat him down and I said, hey, okay, of course, I'm going to start paying you guys chores. Each one of you guys are going to get $1 for every age you are. So you're 7, you can earn up to $7 a day. Kinsley, you're 9, you can earn up to $9 a day. Or sorry, $7 a week or $9 a week. Not $7 a week, a lot. $7, $7 a week or $9 a week. And here's a list on your app that we put on their iPads for all the chores you basically do. So my son says to me, he goes, Dad, that's not fair. There's no way I'm ever going to have more money than Kinsley. And yeah, there is. And he was like, what do you mean? Now, there's 2 ways. One, Slater, what happens if you do all your chores and your sister only does half her chores? How much money are you going to get? And he was like, well, all of it, $7. I go, okay, Slater. If Kinsley could get $9, she only does half her chores. She only gets half her money. How much is that? And he was like, I don't know, like $4. I was like, close, 4.5, but you're 7. So I get you. You know, that's a good guess. And I go, so who has more money at the end of every week, 7 or 4? And he's like, I do it, 7. Yeah. I said, okay. Did she have the potential of making more money than you? Yeah. Okay. Why did you make more money than her? Well, because I did all my chores. So you outworked her, right? Yeah. So there's one way to get ahead in life. Okay. You don't have to make more money than somebody at the onset. You just got to work harder than them and you'll end up with more money. Yeah. I go, and then number 2, I said, at the end of the day, it's not how much money you make, it's how much money you keep, right? So if you guys go to the store, and what happens if Sissy spends all of her money every single week and you save your money at the end of the week and we go to Target, who can buy something? He's like, well, I can. Okay. So you're telling me another way to get ahead. Kinsley made more than you, but she spent all of her money. You made less, but you saved all your money. So now you're richer than her when we go to Target, right? And he was like, oh my God, yeah, right? And it just like clicked in their head, right? The problem is, and then you also, as you guys probably know in the app, it's not, what I do is I don't obviously tax them on their money, but what I do is I take it and they have to basically invest 30% of their money and they just have a little stock account that's attached to it, right? And they have to give away 10% of their money. They pick a charity on it. And then they obviously get to keep 60%. And they're like, oh my God, that's not fair. I'm like, welcome to taxes, kid. Yeah. Dad pays 40 to 50% all the time, right?
That's not
and
fair
so then they understand, oh my God, all the money I'm making, I'm not getting to keep, right? Yeah. And you teach this as a young age. And hopefully they're going to carry those patterns on in their life, right? And that's super easy that you can do. The other thing that you can do with generational wealth for their kids is, this was something I did when each one of my kids were born. So I had money saved up, but most people are like, oh, I don't have it wasn't anything crazy, right? So I wanted to buy in Texas, and I looked at Texas where my wife's from. This is back in 2014, 2016. And I actually heard somebody say you should buy your kids a house, right? And so I said, well,
talking about this morning. We were talking about that this morning.
Right? And that's what you need to do. And it's the best thing to do. And what you want to do is you basically say, okay, I'm going to find a house, right? And whether you don't have the 20% down to do it, okay, you can do a sub 2. Perfect. Take your money that you're going to do on that, right? Simple. Go in. I put 25% down on each one of my kids' houses, which was like $60,000 a house because they were only like $250,000 houses. And then I just put them on 15-year mortgages, right, on each one of the properties. Now, given it was a little bit lower of a payment when interest rates were lower, but still sub 2, you can do the same thing if you find one of those interest rates, right? So I basically did put 25% down, 15-year fixed mortgages on both of them. One of the houses in Texas was like $1,850 a month in their mortgage, and the other one was like $1,900 a month. And they rented for like $2,000 and $2,100, right? So I lost maybe like $75 a month, $100 a month on each one of the fees, which who cares? Yeah. Okay, that's all you're investing for your kid, right? Yeah. And now what happens is as that rent goes up, eventually I'm going to end up cash on, but I'm not going to keep the cash. I'm just going to use it to pay down the mortgage, right? Yeah. So then I calculated it out, and I can roughly have both of their houses paid off within about 11 or 12 years of that house, right? So I bought a house at $250 and $250, right, in 2014 and 2016. Even now, those houses are worth $425 and like $450, right? Great. I think we owe $70,000 on one and like maybe $50,000 on the other. Great. And so now my kids, by the time they're out of college, this is it. I'm telling them, hey, you guys are out of college. You got 2 options. Dad put a house when you were younger, and now you have a house that's paid off. Now, most people, they're like, that's $50,000 kid. How much are you going to spend investing on your kid for over 18 years?
Yeah.
It's going to be $50,000.
Yeah.
I just chose to do it up front, right?
Yeah.
You know, and if people have 401k, it's a great way to do it. So then my kids at 22 years old, just if the house goes up 4% in value, each one of their houses are going to be worth like $750,000, $800,000. So each one of my kids at 22 years old, they have two options. They can, number one, they can go ahead and sell that house, start a business with it, pay their student loans with it, whatever they want to be able to do it. But the only way they can do it is either to start a business or to buy real estate with it. They can't blow it to be able to do anything else. Or guess what? They're stoked. They get out of school. They're going to have $5,000 of cash flow coming in every single month. So now, cool. If you want to go out and you want to do a job that ain't going to make you a lot of money initially, you got to work your way up. At least you got an extra $5,000 a month coming in to kind of support you. You're not bothering me and mom for that money, right? You know what I mean? And so it's a way to be able to do it. And so by doing it like that, and then I plan to do the same thing for my grandkids, be able to do that, where you're not giving them the money up front, but they have the pride of, oh, that's cool, I own a house. My kids tell people, I own a house, whatever. I was like, well, no, you don't. I own the house. When you're 22, you own a house, but guess what? You don't. And I'm not going to make my kids go to college. If one of my kids, my daughter's like super artsy. If she wants to go to an art school, she wants to do some trade, cool, awesome. Why am I going to have you bury yourself or me in debt for something you're not going to be able to do? So depending on where that works out, but those would be kind of a bigger and a smaller thing. I think anybody can kind of really do with it.
I think that's absolutely amazing.
That's awesome.
Yeah, some cool stuff.
Another real estate question for you. So if you were going to invest in any real estate, would it be multifamily? Would it be Airbnb, Section 8? Like out of all of them, which one do you love the best and think is going to have the best long-term returns? I'm not talking short term, but long term.
Yeah.
And why?
So I think one is going to come down to price point, right? So, you know, I'll kind of segregate it into that matter. So right now, the best real estate that I think that is going to be within, and I'm going to say this will probably be 12 to 18 months down the road, is going to be commercial real estate play. And here's why. The way, and you can accomplish this through investing in REITs or things like that. So you don't do. So what most people don't understand about mortgage loans on the commercial space, mortgage loans are given to landlords or people that are buying the property based on a debt service coverage ratio, which basically means, hey, how much is this shopping center going to make in rent per month? Okay, it's going to bring in $100,000 a month in rent. Okay, well, whatever it brings in, your mortgage payment has got to be 25% less than that. Okay, it's your debt coverage ratio. Your income is covering the debt on the property. Cool. Your mortgage can't be more than $75,000 a month. Okay, cool. At today's interest rates, that's a $7 million mortgage, right? Cool. They get it. The problem is that mortgage is not fixed for the duration of the term. That'll either be fixed for 5 years, 7 years, or 10 years on a 25 or 30 year, right? It's the way commercial mortgages work. Well, what we have happening right now is all these 5 years, 7 years, and 10 years, anybody that has bought a building or refinanced a building 10 years ago, 7 years ago, or 5 years ago has a really low interest rate, right? Yep. They got a 3 to 5% rate. Yeah. Well, guess what happens? That rate comes up, and because we're using this to negotiate leases right now. And what happens is they have the option now of saying, hey, bank says, we're only going to extend your term and offer you a fixed rate if you can meet that debt service coverage ratio. Well, guess what? That mortgage of $7 million that was $80,000 a month or $75,000 a month, well, maybe that was at a 5% rate. Well, now we're at an 8% interest rate. So now that $75,000 loan payment is $120,000 a month. Well, now shopping center rents, they're starting to go down. People aren't spending as much money. So that $100,000 a month that was bringing in income, that's probably only $75,000 a month now. So now I have a loan payment that's going to be $120,000. I have rental income coming in at $75,000. Bank's like, I ain't making that deal. Yeah. There's no way.
It doesn't add up.
Doesn't add up. So the landlord has two options: pay down your mortgage from $7 million to $4 million, or sell the property. Wow. That's the only things that happen.
So that's when you get the deals.
And that's when you get the deals.
Yep.
So I am right now. I am working my butt off, and I'm liquidating a bunch of my residential real estate properties that are not the best use of capital, stacking that up so I can start going hunting in about 6 to 12 months to put, and most people are like, well, I don't have the money to buy commercial. get 10 of your friends to all put in $50,000 and you're going to be able to buy some commercial real estate, right?
Yep.
So 100% on that. And I also think there is going to be somewhat of a resurgence in office space again. That what I would do. And the reason why I say that is people are realizing working from home is not efficient for a business.
Oh, it's not.
It's
at
terrible,
all. Yeah.
right? So you have people coming back. So I believe it's going to be smaller spaces that are going to be in a more community atmosphere, that are also going to have some type of a warehouse to it, so people can shoot content. They can shoot all these types of things to be able to do that. So that's where I'm really working and looking for on that side. Then from like the smaller end budget, hands down, what I personally think is the best play is in markets that have very low seasonality, buying Airbnbs sub 2. Okay. And so, but you can't be like anything else, everybody else. So most people, what do they do during COVID? I want to own an Airbnb. No, you don't. You want to buy a second home, but you can't afford the mortgage payment, so you're going to Airbnb it out. And you bought it in an area where everybody else bought it in an area, and now you're mad that it has 50% occupancy, and you're talking crap on Airbnbs. No, you made the decision to buy a second home and hope you can Airbnb it. You didn't look at this strictly just buying as an Airbnb, right? And your thing doesn't stand out. Doesn't stand out at all. So what myself and Shelby and Tarek are actually doing right now, so I'll just tell everybody the concept. So we're looking right now in a couple different markets. I have a couple Airbnbs in Miami that we just bought, and I have one big one in Arizona, and then Ryan Pineda and I are actually developing one in Costa Rica on Discovery Club. We'll be able to rent it out, and we're not using it. But what we're going to do here is it's all about the experience, and it's all about being Instagram worthy, right? Yeah. So what our concept is Scottsdale's an oversaturated market, but it's not oversaturated for large homes that have a very unique thing. People come here, and they come here for bachelor parties. They come for bachelorette parties. They come here for big office retreats. They come here for the waste management tour. They come all these different things to this area, right? All the playoff games, spring training for all the baseball players, all this, right? So, and it's crazy. Like we're finding a house out here. We have a couple offers in, but my wife and I, we rented an Airbnb for 6 months until we found a house we wanted to like, because we never lived here before. Yeah. We're like, my wife told me, she's like, that's fine if you want to buy a house, but we've never lived there, and we just spent 3 years building our dream house, and now we're moving out after a year to go out there. Please get this right, because I don't want to move again. And I'm like, I don't need that pressure now. I'm going to find an Airbnb, and we're going to figure this out together, right? So the Airbnb that we're in, if you rent it out, and let's say you want to rent it out on a monthly basis, during the summer, it's, I think, I don't know, $15,000 to $16,000 a month, okay, right? As soon as the winter time comes and all the snowbirds come out here, that goes to $35,000 to $40,000 a month. Okay, and they're book solid, okay, right?
Wow.
Because it's a higher end, it's a bigger home. It's not. Now, that's not the case on a 4-bedroom random house, right? And this house is huge, it's like 4,500 square feet. It's not like a 10,000 square foot house or anything. So what we came up with the idea is, let's build an experience. So what we're doing is, we're looking for properties, and we're looking for sub 2, okay? Either sub 2 or free and clear, where the owner will carry a certain amount so I can get a below market rate, okay, right? So I'm going to look for a property, and I want a property with a really big lot, and I want something that's not been rehabbed yet, right? So maybe like a modern, kind of like Frank Lloyd Wright, like kind of architecture. I forget what that modern, I forget what the name of the style of it is. Single story, and what we want is we want to get someone about 4,500 to 5,000 square feet. Airbnbs don't use their garage. Nobody cares about it, right? So I can pick up an extra 1,000 square feet there. But what we're going to do that's really cool is in the backyard, we're going to build an indoor building, and it's going to be glow-in-the-dark pickleball that people can do. And on the other side, so what they've caught around out here is called, they're like putt-putt courses, but it's putt-putt, not like a miniature golf course. It's all inside, and they are insane. So they have one called the Putt Shack out here. So it's about $75,000 to build the putt-putt, and it's about $75,000 to build the pickleball. With the building will be like another 50. So we'll be about $250 in, right? However, out here it's really hot in the summer. That's why it's going to be indoors, right? People, when they go on Airbnbs, a mass group, they don't really care about going drinking at the bar. They want to hang out at the house and have a bunch of fun with all the friends that's going to rent an 8,000 square foot house. So our goal is to get a property around $2.5 million, $3 million bucks, be all in about 3.5 on it. Get a sub 2 where it's a 4% interest rate on a $2 million loan, right? We'll invest $500,000-$600,000 to get this all in. Mapped it out, it'll do like about $850,000 a year in revenue. Our debt service on it all in will be like maybe with management fees, $18,000 a month. It's $40,000 a month. because I can do sub 2. Now, if I was going to buy it with today's interest rates, instead of cash flowing 25 or 35 grand a month, I'm going to cash flow 8 grand a month, 9 grand.
That's a big difference.
Which is a big difference. So that right there, but what people don't understand is with an Airbnb, you can't just buy an Airbnb. My Asheville one does so good because I understood the concept of who goes to Nashville, bachelorette parties.
Yeah.
I have a wife who's very girly, and what does my wife love to do? She likes to get ready with all of her girlfriends before they go out. It's her favorite thing to do. I come into my bathroom and there's 8 of them getting ready in there, drinking, listening to music, having a good time before they go out, right? So what I do is that thing we built in the basement of the house, it's 8 lighted mirrors up with full makeup stations for all the girls, with a full bar, and then a giant karaoke stage, all like done in Chanel and all this really cool stuff, right? All graffiti painted. And it was like maybe $100,000 to build. And then every single room, I made it a Chanel room, a Louis Vuitton room, all this. And I didn't buy like Chanel. You just paint it on the wall, you do all that kind of stuff, right? And it's all hot pink. It's got these crazy murals everywhere. So I bought the place for like 1.5, put in like 350,000 into it. So I'm into it for like 1.8 on the property. All my neighbors who have similar properties are getting $550 a night. I'm getting $1,400 a night.
Wow.
And I'm booked nonstop. I don't think you could get the place till January for a weekend.
Wow.
Why? Because people see it on Instagram.
Yeah.
I want to stay there.
Yeah.
And who cares if it's a 5-bedroom. Girls are like, yeah, we'll throw in $300 a night to stay there versus that place for $150 a night. And we get to stay there and we have a good time and it's all Instagram worthy and it's all this stuff.
Oh, yeah.
And my wife was just, a friend of us was just joking around. They sent us a photo. They're like, hey, just so you know, Brian, somebody sent me this and it was a porno that was shot in it, that people rented it and did it in there. And I was like, and like all these OnlyFans girls are like renting the place out and shooting like content there. I was like, well, hey, I don't stay there. I never go there. Do what you want to do. Just pay the cleaning fee.
Still getting paid.
So I was like,
awesome.
Get out the Purell.
yeah, exactly. So we were just like, but it's one of those things, because you want to think about your Airbnb is, okay, can I make above market rents? Can I sustain the standout on Airbnb? And how am I going to fill this thing Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday?
Yeah.
Right? And so our one in Scottsdale, corporations are going to come out. People come out here for conferences all the time. They're going to put all their executives up in that. Do that. I mean, pickleball is the fastest growing sport in America. People love it.
Yeah.
It's huge. So those would be the kind of 2 ways I'd look at it.
Oh, wow. I'd definitely rent there.
Oh, yeah.
For sure.
Yeah, right. Especially if you break it down, it'll probably be like $4,000 a night, but it'll be 8 bedrooms. You get 6 families, 8 families there.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
So you save up so much rather than just going and spending $300 bar tabs. Everyone wants to hang out there with the pool and do everything anyways.
Exactly.
And that way in the summertime, people could still enjoy it because it's all indoors. So that part would be cool.
That's amazing. All right, so I have to ask, what's one of your mottos? Like, what do you live by? Do you have any quotes? Something that you love that really like motivates you every day?
Yeah, I would say the biggest one I probably listen to or that I like keep at heart is bleed during peace so you don't sweat during war. So meaning this, like most people when life's good for them, they just want to chill and kick back, right? They don't want to sweat. They don't want to put in the grind. They don't want to like bleed, right? Or sorry, I said that wrong. Sweat while it's calm so you don't bleed during war, right?
Gotcha.
Sorry,
okay.
I said that right. But so what you basically obviously means is when everything's going fine in life, people want to take their foot on the gas pedal and they want to coast. And then all of a sudden, when the good times end and you got to go to war, guess what? They're not prepared and they get killed, right? Yeah. So it's just, my big thing is always have my foot on the gas pedal. Don't ever feel comfortable in times where everything's good. Reinvest your money. Always be learning a new skill. Always be trying to better yourself on that. So when those bad times come, I'm prepared and I'm not gutted like a pig, because I learned my lesson. I got my clock cleaned in 2008 and 2009. I mean, I was 28 years old at the time and, you make $500,000 a year and all of a sudden it's $3,000 a month, and you're like, what?
Yeah.
And then you invested all these money and all these things you didn't pay due diligence to. And all of a sudden I went from thinking at 27, I had life figured out to sharing a bedroom with my brother in an apartment and had to start all over again at 28. So I remember that. And you could always do a better job. Of course, we could all do a better job at it. But now I'm not saying, I wouldn't like to make what I made in 2021 this year. Of course not. But what I'm making this year is a heck of a lot better than most people. I'm in the black every month when most people are in the red every month. And it's because I sweated. I never stopped grinding in 19, 20, and 21 when everybody was just taking PPP money and buying boats and all these other things with it, right? And so it's just reminding myself to always never take the good times for granted and just treat them like preparation and like before that doomsday or prep, because you know that war is going to come again, you know?
So true.
Yeah.
Discipline. You have that.
You know, it's one of those things that's learned, you know, because I have a really close group of friends. We've been friends since we were 18 years old. Okay. We all, and this is why I think a lot of my success comes from your tribe, man. Because my buddies, we were all, none of us came from money. We were, I mean, we partied our butts off in high school and college and more college and afterwards. I mean, we used to joke around when I first started my mortgage company. We had Wiffle Ball Wednesday in the middle of the day, which all of us would go and we bring a margarita machine to the park and we play wiffle ball for 7 hours, drinking, getting hammered.
Sounds
and we
fun.
It was awesome, right? And then we never worked on Thursday, never worked on Friday. So I goofed off all of that, and like I didn't take advantage of the mortgage market in 5, 6, ever, because I was 26 years old. I mean, was making enough money to live nicely and just was like, shoot, and have us whoever we can do and all these things. And so my discipline just came out of fear of not wanting to miss the opportunity, right? You know, so it wasn't like I was like 21 years old and grinding 12 hours a day. No, like I used to get up at 6:30 in the morning when I was 29 years old. Now I don't miss a day getting up at 4:30. It isn't because like I'm this different person. I just learned a lesson. People don't learn their lesson. Like remember that, you know, like I remember vividly, you know, having no money in my bank, like vividly. I remember having foreclosed properties. I don't ever want to go back there again, you know? And so I think people they have to be able to recall those bad times on a regular basis when there's good times that are happening rather than just having amnesia.
Well, those bad times made you who you are.
Yeah, exactly.
You're truly inspirational.
Yes.
Like
thank you.
Cannot thank you enough. And I hope you keep putting out all that amazing content because I'm telling you, you are changing people's life, and every day you inspire me. I can say that for sure.
Well, thank you guys. I appreciate you guys flying out here too.
Absolutely.
That's awesome, guys.
Absolutely.
I'm excited to connect again. Next time you're in town, definitely hit me up for this for sure.
Definitely. For sure. We'd love that.
Definitely we will.
All right.
Cool.
Thanks.
Perfect.
All right. Thanks, Brian.
Hey, no worries.
All right.